Welcome back. As you can probably tell, we are back on Scott's XB Coupe. Now, she's looking pretty naked at the moment. We've got the engine out and we're doing the last bits and pieces to finish everything up and get that radiator and intercooler in that we have down here. Get all that into position along with all the bits and pieces for the cooler piping and the metal finishing work and all that stuff. So Lockie's gonna jump in here and start doing all the bits and pieces where we had that cutout for the blower. So we're gonna get that all done and then we're gonna go ahead and brace the front here. So we're gonna brace the front across the front here with a bit of 50/50 RHS and then, or SHS. Then we're gonna go ahead and lop the front off. We're gonna be cutting these little cavities in here and boxing them up so we can drop that radiator down and get that radiator neck down and get that cooler forward. And then we're gonna go ahead and chop up the intercooler and get the elbows and stuff going around the corner after we've got everything mounted. And then we didn't film it, but we've already got the rear end out of the car, so she's proper naked. So it's got a bit of a bare shell on the two posts at the moment. And the rear end's over there where we've got it all out. And we're going to address all the old leaf spring mounts on the rails here. So stay tuned, we're going to jump into the front end and then we'll address the rear as we go. SHS here, or RHS should say, is all tacked in. Now we need to make a whole bunch of measurements and cut the rest out. So that entails a couple of things, which I'll grab you under here for a second. So we've got to make sure that these are still serviceable whilst we are going to be working on the car. So we need to make sure that we have the ability to either get this bush out or the nut off with the drop that we're about to put in the front here. So we want to do that, but we also want it aesthetically pleasing as well. So we're going to make some reference points to where the bumper sits and how the car looks on the ground, so we don't have this big chunk hanging out the bottom and looking ugly at the same time. So yes, we do want it functional and we want it to be able to clear the bonnet and everything like that, but we also want it to be good to look at. Alright, so we've got this bit all cut out. Lockie's just smashed that out. Now we're going to go ahead and cut this lower valance out. We've got it all supported with our SHS. We'll cut this off. We'll start putting our mounting tabs on for our chromoly, and we'll be able to zip around those pieces, but keep in mind that the bumper bolts are in there as well, so we'll have to make a little adjustment to how they're in there, but with how we're going to brace the lower front end of this and whatnot, they'll all come into play together. So because they've already got doubler plates on the inside of the rails here, so we'll be able to utilize them for another crossover bar. So we'll chuck you back on time lapse and jump into it now. We're gonna scare him. Oh, just get the shit out of it. Jesus Christ. Alright, now that Lockie's got a heartbeat again. Alright, here's the trans mount out of the XB. So, together with our tail shaft loop, but a couple of things that we need to address is how it's mounted. Originally, the bolts are really loose in that. So what we're going to do is, just in here, we're going to drill that out, and we're actually going to put a big boss in there that's going to be exactly 1/2 inch, so it'll sit on the shank of the bolt, so that way it's supported really well, because even though it doesn't matter how hard you bolt this up with the clevers either side, it's still going to rock around and move. So what we're going to do now is we're going to machine up some bosses to bang in there with a 1/2 inch hole, so it's nice and tight on the shank, and then we'll be able to put them in, weld them up, and happy days. So we'll head over to the lathe and smash that out. So these are just normal, just mold steel bosses. So we're going to face both sides. We're going to grab our center drills. So our center drills are just going to make sure that they are nice and spot on in the middle, and then we'll bang a 1/2 inch hole in them, and then we'll be able to bevel the outside corners, and then we'll be able to weld them in. So Lockie has drilled out the holes for our bushes on the end of the trans mount. Now we're just going to quickly tack these in place. Then we're going to grab the trans mount, bang it back in the car, make sure it's perfect before we go making it permanent. And then we'll weld them in, make it all good, etch prime it back up, and that'll be trans mount all done. Where the original clevises on the car, we had to make these aluminium spacers that have a little step in them, so it locates on the bigger 1/2 inch hole down to the 7/16 bolt. So they're going to locate there, and then we're going to have our bolt and washer go through. So come up, bang in position there, locate our little boss like that, and then we can bolt it up. Great success. On to the next bit. We're going to be attacking the front end now. So I've got a few plates made up. The ones that go in the inner rail here, because we needed the width for the radiator to fit in, as well as the front cap plates that go in front of these. And we're going to be making sure that we can still maintain by getting to the bushes and everything as well. So we're going to be putting our double plates under here, bending up a tube of 1.5 inch moly across the front and then back up. We've got heaps of ground clearance, there's no issues there, so we'll be bending it down, coming across the bottom and then back up to those bottom plates. And once these are all capped and in position, then we can figure out exactly how we're going to bring that bar across the front. So we'll put the bumper bar on, make sure the grill's in place, we'll mock everything up and have it where it needs to be, and then we'll be able to put our mounts on to have our radiator, intercooler, condenser and everything mounted at the front here. So first things first, we're going to get these plates all tucked in, make sure it's not going to be fouling or making any issues for further down the track. And then from there we can start bending up our bar and get that tucked into place too. So let's jump into it.
We have doubler plates for the bottom of the rails. I'm drilling out plug weld holes to weld onto the bottom of the rails. We're going to put our radiator support arm on.
We've just bent up a little piece of welding filler rod here, so just helps visualize someone like myself, a very visual person, visualize what we've got to do, along with figuring out what's going to work, what's not going to work, and everything else as well. So that would be our center line of the radius. We want in our 1.5" tube that'll be going up here. So that'll get notched into the existing supports, and then we'll cut along our plates, hence why we've given it a little bit of green down the bottom. So we've got something to work with, and then we can taper everything else to it. I'm not overly concerned about those ones because we're going to be welding it all into it as well. So now that we have that, we'll be able to figure out how much straight we need in between it. So if we do that as a internal radius, we know that'll go on the outside of these. But if we use that as a center radius, we know we'll notch into them, and then we'll be really able to pick up the original and existing outrigging points. So now we're going to grab our 1.5" tube and we're going to bang these little bends in it. We've got our first bend all done, and we've just marked where the tube starts the radius, where it comes around. So that's all marked there, and what we're going to do is we're going to be holding this up in position just there, and I can visually see whereabouts I want that bend to be scalloped into this support panel here. So what we're going to do is we're going to mark that on this side, on that, just there, and then we're going to measure, because they're both the same either side. So we're going to measure across, and then we've got 75mm. Come around here, we mark our 75mm from there to there. Now, we measure in between them, and we've got .415. So now we'll be able to put a mark from this line here where the start of the radius starts, 415 down, and then we can start the other one from that point as well. Make sure it's square, and then we'll be able to put this in position. They'll have the same amount cut out of the braces here, which will sit up around about roughly there, and then we'll be able to cut the bottoms off and rotate it up, and then mount it or weld it to those doubler plates that we popped under the rails. So let's get that all in, and then we can jump onto cap in the front and putting a bar across and support in the front. So we've got our bars all in place. We've got our double plates all plug welded in. You'll see that it's got a little bit of overhang there, but it's not going to matter because it's only the thickness of the material that'll come up with a nice weld there. Goes across the front, picks up multiple points here, and then across back to the front over here. So now we go cleaning the mill scale up, and then we got a couple other bits and pieces we're going to be banging in. A couple of bits and pieces that were taken out over time were the sway bar mounts. Now the sway bar mounts are obviously needed for engineering and other bits and pieces as well, but we've got our plates just here that we've just finished up. Lockie's just finished doing these. They're going to pop into place right there, and then the sway bar is going to go through its factory position across the front there. So, and hopefully we don't have any issues with the Alice sump, which I don't think we will, but at the same time, if we do, then we'll just cross that bridge when we get to it. So Lockie's just cleaning up a couple of bits and pieces over here, as well as some lower radiator mounts that we're going to be doing, which are going to come off the bottom of the rail here, where our little cutouts are for the bottom of the radiator. It's just going to come out, and then we're going to have the factory rubber mount at the bottom, which is sitting here somewhere. Anyways, we'll be sitting in that down the bottom with a little brace up. That way we know it's all nice and secure, and then we'll be able to tie in this bar to the other one that's going in front. So now it's welding time. Put some welds down here for the front plates and the front bar to tie this all together. And I think Lockie's just finishing up. Got what do you got there?
I've got 2 mounting plates for the sway bar bushes to mount onto.
Nice. So they're just going to pop back pretty much in the factory location. I think we're using a white line style front sway bar, just an oversized one. And yeah, they would have been taken off for drag racing purposes, not going around corners or any intention to do so in the previous engine combos and stuff like that. And with the big block and whatnot that was in it, it more than likely had pipes running right in that area as well. So Lockie's gonna bang these ones in, and then we can continue on with the rest of it and make sure that nothing's gonna be in the way whilst we're going. So I'll leave you with Lockie, and he can tack them in place and start cleaning up more so of the plates we've put in here, and then some radiator mounts that are going on the bottom there. So I'll get stuck into it. Lockie's got all the sway bar mounts in, cleaned up those couple of areas. We'll be able to address these bars. So welding the double plates completely on, and then welding the chromoly tube that goes across the front of the Z bars at the front there. So what we're going to do now is weld the pad on, and then weld the tube to the pad. Cut this RHS out up here, and then we should be able to hopefully clean it all up. Put some extra little strengthening tabs in here, get this radiator all mounted in, and then yeah, jump onto the next bit. We have the RHS that was in between the rails all cut out, didn't move, so we got majority of this all welded up. So we just got to do the top side of these bar between the rails, and then start putting some other bits and pieces. Lockie also got the sway bar pads in, so that's a good start. Now Caleb's just hooking up the jumper cables off the table to the car because our TIG is already earthed to the table, so then we don't have to walk back and forth between them, moving the earth or anything like that. Everything's got a good ground. So now we're just cleaning up a couple of nicks and some old cut marks and whatnot, so we're going to smooth them back so they're all done. And then we can get our radiator lower mounting pads in. So they are going to be these, like we mentioned earlier. So they are going to come off the side here, like that. And then we'll bang a hole in the center. That will pick up the grommet on the bottom side of the radiator here. So we'll bang a hole that is perfect for that, and then we'll be able to get the radiator sitting in position because that's the height that we need it. And then we should be able to jump up the top here and make some top radiator mounts, and then we should be all done with the radiator sides of things. Get the cooler in, put the grill in, start doing the cooler pipes and all that jazz before we jump onto the rear end. So let's jump into cleaning it up and doing all that right here. All right, we're up to the radiator and mounting the bottom part. So we've got these plates over here that we've just done a little 15mm hole in it, which will guide our hold saw a bit later on for the grommet that we're using. But for now, the 15mm will locate the bottom of the radiator. So if we head over here, so if you head over here, that will just locate the bottom of this radiator. So once that grommet and everything's in, this radiator will slide into place. So we've got 740 between the dowels on either side of the radiator. So we're going to quickly mock up here on the edge of the table, which is nice and straight, and we're going to do 740. Bang. All right. So we've got 740 there between the holes. What we're going to do now is we're just going to take a bar across the bottom here to keep it nice and straight, and then we're going to take it over because the bottom of the rails, the passenger side one's been replaced, so it's not quite in the same spot. So what we're going to use is just a little bit of a jig to hold it up in place to keep it nice and flat, and then that way it's the same height off the top, so it's nice and level when you're looking in the car. And we'll get these tacked to the bottom of the rails, and then we'll be able to trim them up how they need to be, and then we'll be able to bang the bigger, I think it's 35 or 37mm hole or something that needs to go in these plates for the grommets, and then we'll be able to sit our radiator in position, and then hopefully all we'll have to do is just make the top mounts and then put everything else in with the cooler. The condensers are part of that setup in a VEVF, so it's pretty straightforward. That should be it. That'll be radiator in, and then we can figure out what we're going to do across the front with a crash bar style point to pick up the intercooler, and then for the bonnet stay, we're going to make it all tie into one. So let's jump into it. When we put the radiator in, the condenser lines that come off either side of the condenser, which are just here, and here. Now, without having to reinvent the wheel and all that stuff, we want them to be able to come straight out so they're nice and easy to get to during the process of working on the car and whatnot. So what we're going to do is we're going to bring that radiator forward a little bit more so those condenser lines come straight out the side and don't foul on the rails or anything. But by doing that and bringing them forward, these plates have bugger all purchase area off the bottom of the rail. So we're going to turn them, and then they're going to look good because they'll be following along the bent chromoly bar that we've got across the front there. So we'll untuck these. We've got some lines on the SHS here. We'll be able to line them up with, as long as we keep that 740 centers, I think we'll be apples. So we'll tack it all up, mock it up again and try again. All right, so we got our radiator pads in either side. Now we had our 15mm hole in there just to locate the bottom of the radiator to make sure that these were going to fit perfectly where they need to go. Now, you're probably thinking, how are we going to hole saw them out for the grommets we're about to put in? So we'll grab one of them. But what we've got here is a 15mm hole. Now, we've got a piece that we've machined up. So we take the drill bit out, and we put this piece in. We use this a lot with the roll cages, doing chassis rail connectors and a whole bunch of other bits and pieces as well. But we're going to bang this 15mm arbor in that hole to locate it, and then we're going to drill that out to the size we need for our little grommets that are going to hold the bottom of the radiator. So we'll get them out, we'll get these grommets in, and then we'll be able to sit the radiator in position, lean it forward, bang our grill and our bumper in, and then we can dictate where our intercooler is going to go. So we'll smash that out right now. Sweet, that went mint. So with all that room we've cut off at the front, we've got room for the cooler, we've got room for the cooler pipes, and we got heaps of ample options that we can use to mount the cooler, mount the bonnet release up here so it's not all floppy McDoppy. So yeah, now we'll address banging the cooler in, banging all the supports and everything in. The condenser lines are easy to get to, everything's maintainable from underneath, so we're super racked. So we've got no power, so we're just going to go with the flow with what we can and can't do. We're going to start by cutting off the plasma clamp weld-ons on the cooler. We'll take them off because, like I said, we're going to have those elbows going around for starters so that the first clamp's underneath. So once that cooler's in position, you never really have to touch it. As well as start addressing mounting everything up. Once that's mounted in position, then we can go ahead, bring those braces up and around, either the front or whatnot to tie the front together, and then we can, yeah, we know everything does what it needs to. We are happy where the radiator sits. We thought we had to lean it back to get the cooler behind this big step in the grill here. We don't, it's mint. So that means we can sit the radiator wherever it likes to sit. We'll sit the radiator, make the top mounts to hold it in place, and then make sure everything's workable. And then we can keep on jumping on to putting the engine and trans back in and then jumping onto the rear end. So we're on a deadline, so we got to get after it. So there might be a little bit less commentary along the way, but we've got to get after it and get it done. Old faithful. Done a whole bunch of welding under here. The radiator tabs are in, the bar's fully welded. We've got our sway bar mounts all welded up as well. So right now, pizza's here. So we're having some pizza for dinner because it's a bit of a late one, but I said earlier, we've got a bit of a deadline. So we're gonna smash some dinner and go back into it. Radiator's in, we've got the factory rubber grommets at the bottom. And Lockie's just over at the folder, banging some top ones up to locate these studs here. So once we get them in place, we're gonna bang a nutsert in the plate that we're using. And that nutsert is gonna be picked up from the front edge here of a bolt hole that's not getting used for what it initially was. And I'm going to machine up some mounts that are gonna pick up these bosses on our Plazmaman intercooler. But as for now, we'll jump on to getting that cooler in place. And before we do that, we need to cut the plasma clamp weld-ons off. So we'll jump into that and see if we can't get an intercooler mounted pretty quickly. these are our little bosses that are going to be going on our intercooler, and we've taken down a little bit of the head of the bolt, and we're going to have them sitting in there nice and flush. So once they're all in place, it's going to then bolt into the bottom of the intercooler and we get a nice neat finish. And then what we'll do from there is we'll grab our chromoly tube. Now you'll see it's not quite as thick as the tube, so what we're going to end up doing is we're going to just pinch the end of the tube a little bit, and that's going to line up nice there to weld it onto the side, and then that'll be our bottom bar done. So, all right. So before we go cutting this down, probably going to just quickly crimp the ends of it a little bit, so it's nice and easy to weld on, and then we'll have somewhere to mount to, and we can bend up another bit of 7/8 and get this all mounted up. Alright, that's all welded up. Pretty good to me. Alright, now we can put a bit of shape into it and happy days. The lower cooler mount is all welded onto the 1.5-inch bar. We're just about to jump on to popping the engine in. So we're going to put the engine in, the blower in, and then we're going to figure out what we need to cut for the blower intake and whatnot, then start putting the radiator, everything in, check our clearances and whatnot, get it all mocked up before it heads off to go get some pipes and everything done. We'll start smashing it together. So that is transmission and engine in. So all new hardware up in the bell housing here. And we've got new trans mount. We're using a factory style trans mount. Just stops a little bit of the vibration. Front end is coming together. Just need to do a couple of little welds while it's up in the air. Bosses are in. So now we'll go ahead and pop the radiator back in. We'll get the intercooler back in, and then we can start addressing the top mount for the intercooler and finish off the radiator mounts as well. What? It's probably easier to put the blower on now, so we'll probably bang the blower on now and then put everything else in, see our clearances and everything like that, and then we could jump on to hopefully the cooler pipes. We've got a bunch of stuff together now. We've got the engine and transmission in, the blower's on, radiator's in, condenser's in, intercooler's in, no top mount yet, just the bottom mount. We've finished the fabs on the rail and everything, but we are gonna be wrapping this up shortly. We've only got a couple of things left to do, and that is gonna be welding a fuel tank. We're gonna just put some bits of angle on the side. The boys have marked it out. They just want me to stitch it on to get it in. We're gonna get the fuel tank in. We're gonna put the rear end back in, and then it's going to go off to the boys where they're going to play with some extractors and see if they can make it fit, because there's a lot of room there. So if they can't, I'm sure their good friend Barney's going to be able to modify them and get them perfect. And then we'll receive the car back, and then we're going to be jumping onto a couple other bits and pieces to finish it off, including the top radiator support panel, including the mount for this, the grille. There's cool modifications we're going to do to the grille to make it fit, because the original mounting points are obviously gone on this side for the intake for the blower, and we're going to beef up the rear suspension parts and stuff as well. So we'll get these few things done and then we'll wrap it up. So we've got pretty much everything back together, and the boys are just putting the sway bar in. So we've got a white line sway bar here. So oversized white line front sway bar for the XB. Now the boys, you would have seen us put those side plates in earlier, and we've just held it up in place. We've got our link pins in, which are these little fellas here. So the link pins all they do is insulate either side of the sway bar when it's twisting, so that way it doesn't rub through anything and doesn't make any groaning or any of those noises. So Lockie's just measuring now to make sure that they're going to be the same both sides, and then we're going to drill them up, and then the D brackets will go on, which are just here. So they're elongated, so we'll be able to move the sway bar forwards and backwards, and then get it in the right spot. But we'll jump in and get some light under there and show you what we're doing. Oh, so sway bar and everything. We've got a buttload to do, I suppose. Got to jump on the cooler pipes, finish the cooler, so put the plate on top, cap the end tanks. We need to mount the oil and trans cooler up in the guards and cut the holes here and here behind the headlights to do that. We need to neaten up the intake and those old holes, including welding to the backside of the grille mounts as well for the new mounting points. I'll finish up these other bits and pieces on these other cars, and then we'll come over and tack the front together. But we can start making those leaf spring perches at the back. All right, so we're on the back of the car here, and Lockie's just about to jump on to getting all this stuff sorted. As you can tell, we can see there's some funky stuff going up there that we want to rectify and make right. So I'm not sure what's happening up there, but we'll fix it up. So we're going to go ahead and cut these ones out. We're going to put our own front little boxes in the front here to hold the front of the leaf spring. And then we'll weld it to pick up the rail, and there's a big bit of 6mm that's welded up here. So we're going to expose those welds, check them out. If we need to grind them out and re-weld them, we'll do that. And we'll probably have to set the box into the rail a little bit just so it stays at the same measurements. But we'll go ahead and measure this up, cut it out, and then we'll put our own boxes back in. Lockie's got majority of the bracketry cut out, and we just wanted to have a gander about what we were going to weld to. And unfortunately, we're not going to be welding to either one of these. So if we jump in here with our multi-grips, you'll see that there is very, very thin, as well as the material up there. So unfortunately, we're just going to spend a bit more time. We're going to go ahead and cut all this off. So how we're going to go about that is, because it's a bit hard to get the camera up in here when we're trying to do these things. So what we're going to do is, you'll see there's a couple of areas here that haven't even got weld on them. So we'll be able to get up behind that, no worries. So we know we can get under the material there. So what we're going to do is, we're actually going to cut majority of the plate out of what we can access by going down here and across there, down and across, and then there might be a little something along those lines. So we're going to cut there, and then we'll be able to grab the backing pad with the sander on it, and then we'll be able to sand back where it's all welded and get these plates off. Then we can get a proper doubler plate in there. As you would have seen if you watched a bit more of the turbo tank stuff, you would have seen how we do the plug welds and weld them in properly and correctly. So we'll go ahead and get the rest of this out both sides, clean them all up, and then get them all ready. So Lockie's going to do that now. All right, so Lockie's got the old hangers off. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to clean this area up a bit nicer, and then we're going to plate the front and the side with 3mm, and then we're going to drill the hole through after it's welded in place, so that that's bang on where it needs to be. It's already got a crush tube in here from whoever did it previously, so that's good. And then we're going to quickly mock up, which is what we're going to do right now, a plate. Because this piece here isn't the same from side to side, we're just going to make 2 templates side to side, so we can fix all that up. So once we get those plates all in, we can bang our 5mm bracketry in here, and then we'll be all sorted. So right now we're just going to quickly trace this section here quickly, and then make up our brackets. So we'll do that now.
3mm or 5mm?
5mm for this, because that's going to go there, yeah?
Oh, that's the side piece. Yeah, gotcha.
And then we'll put a little...
So 3mm on the actual rail. And
yeah, 3mm here, 3mm there, and then this...
5 and 5 and 5.
Yeah, this will go here. So Lockie's got our doubler plates tacked in. So now he's just gonna come down on the hoist, and we're going to pull the back seats out of it and the carpet and whatnot, because it'll be close to those bits and pieces to make sure they don't melt or anything like that. But over here we have our leaf spring brackets. So here's one all tacked up. So you'll see there's a big bevel in there. So that is so we get a nice strong weld all through there, and we got the little gusset on the bottom to make sure it doesn't close up on us, and then we've got one all welded up over here. So that is the big weld that has the bevel in it, and we want that nice and flat as well, because it's going to be on the floor. So that's one done. Now we're going to weld this one up while Lockie's coming down on the hoist over here, and then we'll be able to weld those double black brackets up, get that all in, edge prime everything that needs to be edge primed. After we get the brackets in, drill the holes to be able to mount the leaf springs, get it all etched up, get the rear end in it, and then it's off to go get some extractors made. So once the extractors are made, the car will be coming back, and after the car comes back, we're going to do exhaust and a couple other bits and pieces that you'll have to see when it comes back. But for now, let's get the rear end back in so he can get on out of here. Beautiful. So we've got our doubler plates all welded in, and we've edge primed the top of our bracket here and edge primed the floor, because you're not going to get in to be able to paint that later on. But we've test fitted everything. Everything looks pretty well bang on, just from there to there. So we're going to get both these brackets either side tucked in, take some measurements before we make them permanent, and then we'll be able to do all our correct welds and everything to get these in and make them stay there. Alright, so we've got our brackets in. This side is all done. Can't really tell because of the edge primer, but just like this. So, happy days. Alright, so now we're going to send a drill through there. It's going to pop out the other side, and then we're going to locate it, make sure it's all nice and straight, and then bang it through the other side, and then bolt the diff in. Rear end is all in. So, got the new leaf mounts in, and now we've got Mr. Greg Angus himself, him picking up the coupe, and we've got Scott here to load it up. So we're going to get this loaded up, and then we're going to head off, go get the extractors done, and we'll see you when it gets back for part 3.